Nostradamus. Nostradamus believed that he could predict the future. Michel de Nostradamus was born in December of 1503 in the south of France, one of 9 children of a Jewish family, but they converted to Catholicism to prevent persecution during the Inquisition. He became a pronounced physician because of his high healing rates in patients. But one day his wife and kids died and he was unable to heal them. That triggered a psychic awakening on him, and he started researching on spiritual occultism, leaving home as a famous doctor. After learning more about astrology, alchemy, and other occult disciplines, in 1555, he published the famous book The Prophecies, entailing hundreds of prophecies that have been proven accurate until present times. Some of the prophecies that have come true was the prediction of Adolf Hitler. He predicted where he was born and even spelled his name as Hister. He also predicted the Hiroshima and Nagasaki nuclear bombs. He also predicted the Kennedy assassination and many other events. So how was Nostradamus able to predict the future? He became astrologically skilled. In his book he mentions that the prophecies are astrological readings. He created birth charts of people or snapshots of the sky at the time of birth. He believed the story was written in the stars and constellations. So is there a scientific explanation of the fact that Nostradamus was able to predict the future? In previous video series, we explained how the two-slit experiment, in which simple observation changes the results of the experiment. Some say that the universal consciousness is feeding back information from the future to the past to convert waves into particles, or that human consciousness can create matter. Either way, the results of the experiment are always read seconds, minutes, hours, or days after the experiment, which means that something from the future is affecting present results. So either way, it can prove that this universe's timeline is like reading a book, is code already written from start to finish. We live in a multi-universe, like a set of infinite numbers of books telling the same story, but with small variations. This can be proven by quantum mechanics. Science can prove this. In the famous two-slit experiment, when particles are shot through two slits, particles that are not observed or measured behave as waves. Only when the trajectory of the particles is measured, the particles behave as particles and not as waves. So simple observation, changes the results of the experiment. How this experiment proves the universe's timeline is already written from the beginning to the end. There are 2 scenarios in this experiment. One scenario when the trajectory is not measured, and when the result in the screen is the pattern of waves. In the other scenario, a device to measure the trajectory is installed, and the immediate result is a pattern of particles in the background screen. 3 hours later, the scientist reads the measure made by the device that is observing the trajectory and realizes that the measure matches exactly with the particles pattern in the screen. It's like the universe knows that somebody will read the measures, and so the universe makes the correction and adjusts to convert the wave into particles. Some people says there's a universal consciousness that knows the future and predicts, but that's not the case. The universe is not feeding back information to the past from the future. The story was already being written, and the scientist was supposed to measure and not measure. The past and present and the future are all already there, written like the next paragraphs in a book, creating the illusion of time. The scientist in this scenario is dispersing the timelines of the universe into multiple directions when deciding whether to implement a trajectory to measure in the experiment or not. In this case, two stories are written from the beginning of the universe until the end of the universe. Yes, the only explanation is that Nostradamus somehow figured out a way to read the stars and read the story in the next pages of the code written in the universe. If you like our videos, please subscribe and enable the notification bell.